The Bible's Queen Esther has had a recent surge in popularity. People love the story of a Jewish peasant girl rising to the rank of queen and eventually saving her entire people. But Queen Esther's story is more than that. Here are some weird things you didn't know about Queen Esther. Here's a brief and unofficial summation of Esther's story to get us started. Long ago in Persia, the queen angered the king, so he dumped her and picked a new queen, Esther, who was secretly Jewish. But when her cousin Mordechai got in trouble, the big bad guy Haman decided to kill all the Jewish people. So Esther threw a banquet and revealed to the king that she herself was Jewish. He took her aside, Haman ended up dead, and now to celebrate we get Purim and triangle-shaped cookies. The end. But actually, there's a lot more to it than that. Weirdly, for a book about a woman, you have to start with the dude, Esther's husband, King Xerxes, after his conquering and soldiering days are over. First, let us clarify. Yes, it is the same King Xerxes from 300. He was the guy who tried to conquer Greece and failed, but his list of victories is pretty extensive. He basically created the very concept of Persia after he became the ruler of Babylonia, Egypt, and a bunch of other nations with their cultures. He also popularized Zoroastrianism, a religion which is considered the predecessor to a lot of monotheistic faiths that have messiah figures and contend with the balance between good and evil. Esther's predecessor, Queen Vashti, was a queen because she disobeyed King Xerxes, but the context puts things in perspective. King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to come to his feast. He wanted her to parade around so he could show off what a beautiful woman his wife was to his bros. This command came while she was hosting her own dinner, and some scholars think he was actually asking her to show up nude. She refused to come, probably because she didn't want to indulge her drunken husband, so obviously the king said she deserved to be punished for such a transgression. Though Vashti was once vilified, modern biblical scholars view her as a feminist icon, standing up for her own right and status as a person. Queen Esther's birth name was Hadassah, a Hebrew name that means myrtle, a beautiful type of tree, but she took on the name Esther to help hide her heritage. This was probably for her own protection, seeing as the anti-Semitic Haman was in power and her cousin Mordechai could see the way the wind was blowing. Esther's greatly admired by how much she tried to maintain her Jewish traditions even in secret. Esther and Mordechai were definitely cousins. There was also a big age gap between them, seeing as Mordechai took Esther in after she was orphaned. But according to the Torah.com, some translations suggest he took her in as his wife, not as his ward. It may not have been as icky as it sounds to modern ears though. Some scholars suggest Mordechai could have married Esther to protect her. The society at hand largely viewed women as the property of men, so marriage meant men wouldn't mess with Esther because to do so was to offend Mordechai. Esther wasn't just the king's wife, she was a political powerhouse in her own right. To save her people, she began with a risky first move, entering the king's court without being summoned. This could have 100% gotten Esther killed, but she dared to do it, dressed in the finery of a queen and accompanied by two maids to give her the proper air of authority and power. She then requested the king and Haman both attend a banquet, where she then dramatically revealed her heritage as well as Haman's plot to exterminate the Jews and begs for the king's help. It was a masterful bit of political theatre, but it was only part of the plan. In the background, Mordechai had also foiled a plot to kill the king. Once the king put two and two together, it culminated in a very bad day for Haman. The Jews were saved, Mordechai became the king's chief advisor, and Haman was executed. The Megillah, which is the Jewish text about Esther's life that's read at Purim, says that she may not have had natural beauty, but instead was blessed with grace from God. And honestly, Esther's story makes more sense when her beauty is a God-given superpower. The Jewish Encyclopedia states that in this version of events, the other girls, instead of being jealous, take care of her because they can clearly see the king will choose her. The king tries to look away from her when she visits court to resist her beauty, but God allegedly sends angels to force him to check her out. Later on, he says he will give Esther half the kingdom if she so asked. And when Haman is begging Queen Esther for his life, he falls onto the couch she's lying on. The king walks in, thinks Haman is trying to go after his hot wife, and promptly has Haman executed. For millennia, Esther's story has been celebrated during the holiday of Purim, but modern scholars believe that Purim might not originally have been a Jewish holiday at all. The theory that Purim and the story of Esther are a reworking of a Babylonian holiday, something suggested by the names. Esther, Mordechai, and Haman are close to the names of the Babylonian gods Ishtar, Marduk, and Haman. The holiday also didn't include religious elements initially. The reading of Esther's story in temple was added over time, and some Jews maintained the tradition of dressing up Halloween style on Purim, which may pay tribute to Jews secretly practicing their religion in times of persecution, and may have also been a way to lend dignity to poor people who were looking for help on Purim. When everyone receives gifts, no one's embarrassed. Esther's story is infamous among Bible scholars for never directly mentioning God. A lot of Sunday school pastors write this off, saying God doesn't have to be mentioned for evidence to show religious forces are at work in Esther's life. But the lack of mentioning of God was actually a big problem when it came to getting Esther into the Bible at all. Religious icon Martin Luther actually said about it, "I am so great an enemy to Esther that I wish it had not come to us at all, for it has too many heathen unnaturalities." Interestingly, though, the Greek version of the book of Esther does include dozens of references to God, but those parts are considered to be apocryphal, so they're not included in the Bible. Weird, right? Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite biblical figures are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.